Good Tuesday evening. It is November the 28th, 2017, and welcome to the December forecast for 2017. Here in just 2 days, I will be finalizing my winter forecast, and this will also be coming out via YouTube. But let's go ahead and get into what the first month of winter, at least, is going to have in store for us as meteorological winter begins here in just 3 days. First, we're going to talk about the Bering Sea roll, which is what we use to correlate between the Bering Sea and the U.S. and what the weather does between them. So usually what happens in the Bering Sea, about 6 to 10 days later, you can roughly expect that to happen in the U.S. So we're going to look at a few maps here, and the first one is on December the 3rd. And if we use the 6 to 10 day correlation, that would put us anywhere between December the 9th through the 13th. Notice that on the 3rd of December, we're forecasting from the European Ensemble Mean Guidance. Here's the Bering Sea that I circled for you right here and highlighted in green. And notice we have a very large trough, very lower than normal heights. These are the anomaly. These are the geopotential height anomalies. So these are very far-reaching, below average normal high temperatures, or rather high heights for this time of the year in this part of the world. And you notice that if we go ahead and forward that into the 9th or the 13th, around December the 10th, notice we have a very large trough in the eastern United States. So it looks like this is going to work out. It worked out in October, which is how I forecasted the very prolonged cold spell in the last couple of weeks of October and going into Halloween. And then I think this is going to work again if I can use it correctly for the upcoming month of December. If we look at another correlation, this would be for December the 9th. A correlation for December the 9th, 6 to 10 days later, would put us anywhere from December the 15th or the 19th. Notice how right here is the Bering Sea, and we have three arrows right here. One of them is showing a trough moving southwest towards parts of Japan and eastern Asia. We have another trough that's moving out to sea into the central part of the North Pacific. Meanwhile, we have a ridge, or at least higher than normal heights, trying to poke their way into the Bering Sea right here, which is showing this this upward arrow right here. So we're not really looking at above average heights right here, or really any sort of ridge by any means during this time frame, but it does show that the trough that was once there on December the 3rd, by December the 9th, is starting to break down. So that tells me that maybe by around December the 15th or the 19th, we can expect possibly those cold temperatures that came the 9th or the 13th to begin to break down just a little bit. And if we look at what the December 13th correlation gives us, we see the trough returning back to the Bering Sea, which says about December 19th through the 23rd, putting us very close to the holiday season, is showing that we see a return to those colder than normal temperatures as we go towards the holiday season if we see a trough here on the 13th. Now, once we get out to December the 13th, this is forecasting 360 hours away from now, so this could very well not be correct and not verify, but I do feel confident to use it because it has been showing up in the model guidance, this ridge, or rather this trough right here, around the 13th of December. It has been showing up very numerous times over the last couple of runs. So I do feel confident about the trough being there around this time frame. Therefore, I am confident that as we enter into the last few final days before the holiday, that we begin to see those colder than normal temperatures make another unleashment and another rude awakening. Here's the 200 millibar winds, which is basically what we use to find the storm tracks. And we're also going to look at what the forecasted anomalies are at the same time. This is on December the 8th, and notice we have a Pacific jet, which is what you see right here where my mouse is, and we also have a subtropical jet. Both of these work together during the wintertime to make winter storms and also to make some pretty strong storm systems that can do a lot of damage depending on if it's rain or snow. But we see the subtropical jet right here moving into portions of the Baja of California, northern Mexico. Remember, this is on December the 8th, which is also going to correlate with some very below average temperatures that I will show you here in a minute. We notice that both of them are phasing or coming together where these arrows are meeting into this boxed area, which is in the Ohio Valley, the mid-Atlantic, up into the northeast and the eastern seaboard. And this is a big time signal that we see a large storm system around the 8th of December and onward that could pose a threat for snow in portions of this country. So we are watching that very closely. There is going to be a very big storm system on the 6th of December, around the 5th or 6th. There are some questions to see if cold air moves in quick enough and turns some of that rain over to snow here in western Kentucky. Right now, I'm thinking it's an all-rain event, and we see some strong storms from it, maybe even some severe weather. But then we move into a very colder pattern as we go into the 9th through the 13th of December. So this is the 8th, and we're watching the very backside of that same system on the 6th, just the backside of it, possibly bringing in some colder temperatures. And if it comes in quick enough and we have another system coming in along with it, we could see some snowflakes. But this is still long gone. This is still a long way from now. So we're not very confident in at least snow chances, but we are confident that there is increased odds in those snow chances. We have a subtropical jet and a polar jet and a Pacific jet all meeting together to make what we could be looking at as a very active December once we get towards the middle of the month, or at least the second week. And this is for December the 9th. Notice the same time, and we're looking at very below average temperatures, up to 9 degrees Celsius below normal. That would correlate to about 48 degrees Fahrenheit below normal. This is at the 850 millibar level, which is just a couple thousand feet off of the surface, so not very far off of the surface, and we're looking at extremely cold air. So we could be looking at temperatures that we haven't seen so far this season, and that is a definite shot, the coldest air of the season, as we look at this air mass and study it very closely. We also look at the current U.S. snowfall signals, and on November the 5th last year, we saw almost no snowfall in the United States. We go to this year at November the 5th, and look at that. We have snow covering the entire northern tier, portions of southern Canada. But what happened to it? Now we're at November the 28th, still the same year, but we lost all of our snow. A lot of it's starting to build up into the Hudson Bay area, and notice how it just almost rides perfectly with the Canadian and U.S. border along the northern Great Lakes. And we also look at the snow not even really covering portions that it did at the beginning of this month. So there is a little bit of a signal that our really good foundation that we had, besides up in the mountains, which is usual for this time of the year, but it's not usual. In fact, we're almost reaching a record minimum snowfall for right now in the United States. So that is extremely excessive compared to where we were just about 3 weeks ago when we were looking at a big amount above average snowfall for the entire United States as a whole on average for this time of the year back on the 5th. But we had some warmer air moving in, and with that is what happened to bring us all of the snowfall melting away eventually. And we also shut down the Pacific jet, which was really active towards the beginning of the month and was pumping in a lot of storm systems. And whether it's pumping in warm air for us, it's usually cold enough for snow for the northern United States. And so it was bringing a lot of snow up there. The Pacific jet has now calmed down, which is why we are starting to cool down a little bit going into December. And this is also shutting down the snow systems up in the northeast and the northwest, rather. But it will begin to maybe turn on the snow systems down south where we could see snow. We go to November the 28th last year, and we were seeing more snow then, which was still below average, than we are now. So we went from last year, there was no snow at the beginning of November, but this year there was a lot of snow at the beginning of November in the northern United States, southern Canada. The reason it's important to know this is because when we see a lot of snowfall to our north and west, that's usually the source for our cold air. And in this kind of scenario coming up this winter in the month of December, a lot of our cold air will come from southwestern Canada and the northwestern United States. If we have a lot of snow up there, it cools the temperatures up there very rapidly, and by the time that same cold air mass moves its way into our portion of the country, it's usually bringing a little bit more of a punch than it would so if there was no snow to work with when that cold air mass moved through the area of very thick snow. So when we do have snow, temperatures tend to be colder by the time that air mass moves its way towards us. But now we're looking at almost a record minimum. Last year, we were looking at the same area up here, hardly any snow, and the same area right here, hardly any snow, but we're still looking at portions of the northern Appalachians and the northeast, a little bit more snow. But we think that the snow machines are really going to get turned on as we go into the beginning of December. So expect a lot of this to fill in, and then that's why I'm thinking by the end of December, we will have a lot more very intense cold shots because we will have more snow to work with up here. And a stratospheric warming event, I think, is possible. This is the 10th of December right here, and we see a very big red blob right there. And what that's indicating is that we see a large stratospheric warming event to our north at the 10 HPA level. And so we are looking well high up into the atmosphere, but we're looking at a stratospheric warming event that could take place. And when this happens, it usually disrupts the polar vortex, sends it down south, and that's when we are going to be looking for maybe some colder temperatures going into the month of December. The analogs that I chose for this year, this is the temperatures from 1995 to 95, even 1996, and then from 2000 I did weight it twice because 2000 was a very important year and a very similar year to what I think could happen this December. And then 2005 and '09 were two of the other years that I picked, all blending together to make a big cold regime moving into the central and eastern United States for the month of December. Notice how it's coming from the northern United States, so that's where our cold source is. We see a ridge in the southwest getting squashed by a lot of this cold weather, so it looks like most of the United States as a whole will be very cold in December, but we are going to have some areas of warmth to our southwest, so when this cold let up at times, which it will, this ridge will be ready to move in and take over and control our weather for at least a few days before the cold weather would move back in. Here's the December precipitation anomalies. We're looking at drier than normal precipitation from these years. I think that the cold air will suppress our storm track a little bit further south than what would be favorable for a lot of snow and a lot of rain, so I think we will be drier than normal, but when we have the cold air moving so far south, we increase our chances for Alberta clippers and some snowstorms that could come out from the north instead of those big monster snowstorms that come out of the south. But anytime that cold lets up a little bit and the storm track moves a little bit further north and they try to meet together in phase, we could look at a big snowstorm. But a lot of this, guys, it's uncertain. This is more fun than it is actually serious. This is just a big guess, basically, for what the month of December is going to do. So this isn't saying we're going to have snow. If you remember last year, the very first 3 weeks of December was very, very cold, almost record-breaking cold at times, and all of a sudden we warmed up by the very end of December and going into the holidays, and what that happened was no one really remembered any of the cold that happened right before it, and everybody in November last year was thinking, man, we have a really good shot, a real solid shot of some really good snows in the Midwest and the Ohio Valley going into the Northeast, and nothing ever happened. And so what we think that as we go into this month, there is possibility for that to happen again. Cold air equals dry air, and when dry air comes in, it's moisture starved, and we usually look at less snowstorms, less rain systems, but sometimes when the cold lets up a little bit, but it's still kind of lingering around and it's cold enough for snow, and we see the moisture start to return a little bit, we begin to look at a more active pattern involving for our part of the country. So whenever the cold lets up just a little bit, we might open our doors for a little bit more snow if the air is cold enough and we see moisture tapping into it. It all has to come together perfect. We can barely forecast a snowstorm a day in advance or even hours in advance, let alone this is still not even the month of December yet. So we still have a lot to monitor, and snowstorms they will come and they will go. It's just part of winter. I'm just giving you a chance that the odds are favorable for snow going into this month, but remember, they were last year too, and we didn't see anything, so keep that in mind. Notice how we see drier than normal precipitation in the very far northwest, which tells me the Pacific jet is turned off, which means we're not pumping any warm Pacific air into the United States and flooding it with the United States with warm air, which is what happened last year once we got into January. December last year was very cold, but then the Pacific jet got turned on at the very end of December. That's why we warmed up so quickly. It was a record-breaking warm Christmas in Paducah last year. We also see that we have the wetter than normal conditions around Florida and then up into the Northeast. So the storm track will be down in here. It's not going to take much for it to move north, and then we're looking at a jackpot snowstorm. But like I said, everything has to come together perfect. So we're looking at a warm start to December, turning cold, though, by week 2, the 8th or the 14th. Remember, I said that we're looking at that correlation of the Bering Sea showing from around the 8th or the 14th or the 9th or the 13th is what I said earlier. Same time frame, we're looking at a very cold air mass moving in. We look at that quick warm-up possibly by the end of week 2 and the start of week 3, around the 15th or the 18th. Remember, I mentioned that as well because of that little slight ridge or that breaking down of trough in the Bering Sea around the 9th of December. Then we turn cold again for the holidays because by around the 13th of December, we're correlating 6 to 10 days later, the 19th or the 25th, of another cold shock coming in because that trough builds back in the Bering Sea. Below average temperatures, I think, is what we're going to finalize the month in with below average precipitation, but that doesn't always mean below average snowfall. We're just looking at overall drier than normal, but remember, dry air equals cold air, so we at least have the cold air. It won't take much for a system to try and dive into the United States and produce snow for our region, so just keep that in mind. But below average temperatures, below average precipitation. Remember, my winter forecast will be released in 2 days from now on Thursday evening. Make sure and look forward to that. But until then, this is your forecast for December, and I do feel pretty confident that we're looking at a much colder and maybe even snowier December than we've seen in quite some time.